I discovered my parents used my identity to secure a second mortgage and spent the money on my brother's wedding. I found out by accident. I was 29 years old and trying to buy my first house. The mortgage broker called me on a Tuesday afternoon. She sounded confused. She asked why I already had a large mortgage obligation tied to a property I didn't own. I thought she had the wrong file. I laughed. She didn't. She gave me the address. It was my parents' house. The house I grew up in, the house they had owned for nearly 30 years. I told her there had to be a mistake. She said there wasn't. My credit report showed a second mortgage worth almost $200,000. My name was on it. I felt my stomach drop. My parents had never mentioned anything. I had never signed anything. I had never borrowed that money. The broker asked if I wanted to dispute the debt. I told her I needed time. The moment I hung up, I called my mother. She didn't answer. I called my father. He didn't answer either. An hour later, my mother finally called back. I asked a simple question. Why is my name on a mortgage? There was a long silence. Then she said something that made no sense. She said we should discuss it as a family, not deny it, not question it, not ask what I meant, just discuss it. My heart started pounding. I drove to their house that night. My brother Ethan was there. His wife was there too. The moment I walked inside, everyone looked nervous. That scared me more than anything. My father asked me to sit down. I refused. I demanded an explanation. Again, there was silence. Then my father sighed heavily. He said they had only intended it to be temporary. I felt ice run through my veins. Temporary what? Temporary identity theft? Temporary fraud? My mother started crying. My brother stared at the floor. Nobody looked surprised. That was when I realized everyone already knew except me. My father explained that several years earlier they needed money urgently. The bank wouldn't approve another loan under their names. Their debt-to-income ratio was too high, so they used my information just until they could refinance, just until things improved, just until they paid it back. Those words kept repeating, just until I asked how they got my information. My mother looked away. I already knew the answer. Parents know everything: social security number, birth certificate, employment history, old tax documents, everything. I asked who signed the paperwork. Nobody answered. I asked again, still silence. Then my brother finally spoke. He said it wasn't supposed to hurt me. I turned toward him. That was the first moment I suspected he was connected. Something about his tone felt rehearsed. Something about his guilt felt personal. I left before I said something unforgivable. That night I barely slept. The next morning I pulled every credit report I could find. The second mortgage was real. The payments were current. The debt had existed for almost 4 years. 4 years. Nobody had told me. Nobody had asked. Nobody had apologized. Then I noticed something strange. The mortgage date matched another event, Ethan's wedding. The timing wasn't exact, but it was close, very close. At first, I dismissed the thought. The wedding had been beautiful, expensive but beautiful, a vineyard venue, a live band, a luxury honeymoon in Europe. I remembered everyone joking that my parents must have won the lottery. At the time, I hadn't questioned it. Now I wondered. I started digging. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted answers. I requested copies of every document connected to the mortgage. That process took weeks. During those weeks, my parents called constantly. They wanted to talk. They wanted understanding. They wanted patience. None of them wanted documentation. That made me suspicious. Then another strange thing happened. My brother called. He asked me not to involve lawyers. Not hello. Not how are you. Not an apology. Just don't involve lawyers. That told me more than he realized. I asked why. He said lawyers would destroy the family. I asked what exactly they would discover. He had no answer. A week later, the documents arrived. I opened them at my kitchen table. The signatures looked like mine, at least from a distance. Then I looked closer. They weren't. Someone had practiced. Someone had copied my handwriting. Someone had done it carefully, but not perfectly. My hands started shaking. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a technical error. This was deliberate. Then I saw the witness section. A familiar name appeared. A family friend named Greg. Greg had known my parents for decades. I called him immediately. The moment I mentioned the mortgage, he went quiet. Then he said he thought I knew. I felt my pulse hammering. He thought I knew. Those words echoed in my head. Greg explained that my father told him I had agreed to help. He said the loan was part of a family financial arrangement. He said everyone seemed comfortable. Greg had no reason to question it, but now he sounded horrified. That conversation changed everything because it proved planning, it proved deception, it proved they had created a story for outsiders. I confronted my parents again. This time I brought copies. I spread them across the dining room table. My mother immediately started crying. My father immediately started defending himself. Neither denied what happened. Instead, they argued necessity. That word kept appearing, necessity. They said families help each other. They said sacrifices are normal. They said they intended to tell me eventually. I asked where the money went. My father said household expenses. My mother nodded. Something felt wrong. They answered too quickly. The story sounded prepared. I asked for bank statements. They refused. That refusal told me everything. I hired an attorney. The reaction was explosive. My parents accused me of betrayal. My brother accused me of overreacting. My sister-in-law sent me a message saying families should forgive mistakes. Mistakes, as if someone accidentally forged signatures and borrowed $200,000. My attorney requested financial records. At first there was resistance. Then there were delays. Then there were excuses. Months passed. The deeper we dug, the stranger everything became. Large transfers appeared shortly after the mortgage funds were released. Those transfers didn't go toward debt reduction. They didn't go toward home repairs. They didn't go toward medical emergencies. Instead, they went somewhere else. Wedding vendors, travel agencies, luxury deposits, event planners. My hands went numb reading the records. The mortgage money had funded Ethan's wedding, almost all of it. The vineyard, the catering, the honeymoon, the designer dress, the custom decorations, everything. I sat in silence for nearly an hour. I kept hoping I misunderstood. I hadn't. The dates matched perfectly. The amounts matched perfectly. The evidence was overwhelming. Suddenly, years of memories looked different. I remembered my parents bragging about giving Ethan the wedding of his dreams. I remembered Ethan claiming he paid for most of it himself. I remembered how defensive everyone became whenever costs came up. Now I knew why. The money had come from me, or more accurately, from my stolen identity. I confronted Ethan alone. I wanted one honest conversation. At first, he denied knowing. Then I showed him the transfers. His expression changed. Not surprise, defeat. That was when I learned the truth wasn't finished. He admitted he knew money had come from a loan, but he claimed he didn't know the mortgage used my identity. I wanted to believe him. Part of me still did. Then I asked a simple question. Why did you tell me not to hire lawyers before anyone mentioned identity fraud? His face went pale. He had no answer. That answer was enough. He knew more than he admitted. Maybe not everything, but enough. Weeks later, another detail surfaced. One of the wedding invoices listed Ethan as the direct client, not my parents. Ethan, he personally approved expenses. He personally requested upgrades. He personally expanded the budget multiple times. Every upgrade happened after the mortgage funds arrived. That destroyed the last piece of doubt. He knew where the money came from, maybe not initially, but eventually. And he kept spending it anyway. The lawsuit moved forward. I never wanted it. I hated every second. Family gatherings disappeared. Holiday traditions ended. Relatives took sides. Some defended me. Others called me selfish. One aunt actually said I should be grateful my parents trusted me enough to use my credit. I wish I were joking. The stress became overwhelming. Then my mother called late one night. She sounded exhausted. For the first time, she stopped defending herself. She told me the real story. Years earlier, my parents had promised Ethan a dream wedding. They believed appearances mattered. They believed family reputation mattered. When costs exploded, they couldn't afford it. They were terrified of looking poor, terrified of disappointing him, terrified of embarrassment. Then someone suggested using my identity. I asked who. She started crying. She wouldn't answer. That silence answered anyway. My father. The idea had been his. She admitted they justified it by telling themselves I was financially responsible. I had a stable job, good credit, no major debts. They convinced themselves I would never notice. And if I did notice, I would forgive them. That realization hurt more than the fraud. They knew me so little, or maybe they knew me too well. Maybe they knew I always avoided conflict. Maybe they expected me to stay quiet. Maybe they thought family loyalty would trap me. For months I wrestled with guilt, not because I was wrong, because they were my parents. I kept remembering birthdays, vacations, school events. Every good memory collided with the betrayal. Then another revelation surfaced. The mortgage wasn't the only account. There had been smaller loans, credit lines, applications using my information. Most never activated. Some were denied. Others existed briefly before being closed. The pattern stretched back years. This wasn't one desperate decision. It was a habit, a system, an assumption that my identity belonged to the family. Suddenly, everything made sense. The strange mail that occasionally disappeared. The financial questions my parents always asked. The times they requested copies of documents for vague reasons, clues I ignored for years. The case eventually settled before trial. My parents agreed to refinance the debt entirely under their own names. They paid substantial penalties. They reimbursed legal costs. They signed admissions confirming the fraud. My attorney considered it a major victory. It didn't feel like one. Nobody wins when a family destroys itself. After the settlement, Ethan tried contacting me. He wanted reconciliation. He said enough time had passed. I asked him one question. If the bank had approved the loan using your identity instead of mine, would you have accepted it? He couldn't answer. That silence ended the conversation. 3 years have passed since then. I rarely speak to my parents. Sometimes months go by without contact. My relationship with Ethan barely exists. People still ask why. They assume it was about money. It wasn't. Money can be repaid. Trust can't. The strangest part is what happened afterward. Once relatives learned the full story, more secrets emerged. Apparently, my parents had always prioritized Ethan, not openly, not dramatically, just consistently small sacrifices, small exceptions, small excuses. Over decades, those small choices became a pattern. I simply hadn't seen it. The mortgage revealed more than financial fraud. It revealed the family hierarchy. I learned where I stood. I learned whose dreams mattered most. I learned whose future was considered expendable. Last Christmas, my mother mailed me a letter, not a text, not a phone call, a handwritten letter. Inside, she apologized, truly apologized, maybe for the first time. She admitted something that still haunts me. She wrote that when they used my identity, they never once discussed whether it was fair. They only discussed whether they would get caught. I read that sentence 10 times because it explained everything. The fraud, the lies, the secrecy, the years of silence. The problem was never desperation. The problem was entitlement. They genuinely believed they had a right to my future if it benefited the family they preferred. Sometimes I think about that mortgage application. The forged signature, the fake consent, the confidence required to submit it. Someone sat at a table and carefully copied my name. Someone looked at those documents and chose to become me. Not for survival, not for food, not for shelter, for centerpieces, for wedding photos, for a honeymoon, for appearances. And the most unsettling realization is this. The mortgage itself wasn't the biggest lie. The biggest lie was something I believed for nearly 30 years. I believed my parents saw me as my own person. The fraud revealed the truth. When they needed something valuable, they didn't see a son. They saw an asset, and that discovery cost far more than $200,000.